Hello, I'm Chris Annadale, podcast editor for the Ciceronian Society. You are about to listen to an excerpt from episode 55 of our podcast, The Sower. This episode was titled Robert Nisbet's The Social Philosophers. The speaker is Luke Sheahan of Duquesne University, talking about who Robert Nisbet is and what his book, The Social Philosophers, is about. Enjoy.
But anyways, Luke, if you could just start by just briefly introducing who was Robert Nisbet and what led to the republication of this volume specifically.
Well, Robert Nisbet was one of the greatest sociologists of the 20th century. He finished his doctorate at the University of California at Berkeley in 1939. He taught there at Berkeley for a number of years. Then he was dean of the University of California at Riverside campus. And then he finished up his academic career. He was at a few other places as the Albert Schweitzer Chair at Columbia University from 1974 to 1978. So he was president of some sociological associations. So he was somewhat alone among conservatives and spending his entire career in academia. And he was awarded the Jefferson Lecture by President Reagan in 1987, I believe, which is the highest award given by the federal government in the humanities. So he was kind of, in terms of academics, he was at the very pinnacle of academia. He wrote somewhere around 20 books and hundreds of essays and reviews and that sort of thing. So he was really prolific, published everywhere, was kind of knew everyone. He was friends with Russell Kirk. I read through some of his correspondence. He was corresponding with Buckley back in the 50s, with Kirk in the 50s, with Folks Leander. So he was kind of an international figure in many ways. His most famous book is The Quest for Community, which was his first book published in 1953. It ended up being kind of a groundbreaking book in our understanding of how the modern state damages intermediary associations. And it ends up as often listed as one of the top conservative books in the post-war conservative Renaissance. Although he didn't intend it to be that way. He published it with Oxford University Press. He was an academic. It was just he was just being an academic. But it ended up being a really interesting book because of his focus upon associations that are not the political state and the damage that the political state does to those associations as it aggregates power, especially over the last 500 years. So Nisbet's a very important figure, and his main thesis the thread that holds many of his books together is this study of community, what it is, how it can integrate human beings into meaningful lives, and also how it can cause alienation if those communities decline. Now, the book that we're talking about today, The Social Philosophers, he published this in 1973, so 20 years after publishing his first book, Quest for Community. And it was kind of he published Quest for Community, and then he spent some time in administration and that sort of thing. It wasn't really until he was in his 50s that he goes back into academia and starts publishing a lot. And so he has this whole raft of books that come out during this time, and frankly, like I'm a little biased on being a Nisbet scholar, but brilliant stuff he's publishing. And I think this book here is actually his most brilliant in his entire oeuvre. And the reason is that the premise of the book is that all of social thought, starting at the very beginning, starting with Socrates and the pre-Socratics and all of that, it's an attempt to articulate a vision of community. That's what all of them are doing for the last 2,500 years. And the way he frames it is human beings have lived in kinship communities of some sort for, as far as we know, forever. That's just how human beings are. It's what our species does. So we live in clans, tribes, these sorts of things. And then along comes the political community. And the political community its function was specifically to break up those kinship bonds, to become the sole source of community, to break up the tribes and clans, and to reaggregate individuals upon a different basis. And then you get social thought. And the political philosophers start to try to articulate the reasons that this happens and the crisis it creates in the human psyche. And that's where we get Socrates talking about justice and that sort of thing. And we get the rest of social thought flowing out of that.